The Aral Sea, Aral/ur. L/4, Kazakh, Aral teńizi. Uzbek, Orol dengizi. Karakalpak, Aral teńizi. Was an endorheic lake lying between Kazakhstan, Aktobe and Kyzylorda regions in the north, and Uzbekistan, Karakalpakstan autonomous region in the south, which began shrinking in the 1960s and had largely dried up by the 2010s. The name roughly translates as Sea of Islands, referring to over 1,100 islands that had dotted its waters. In the Mongolic languages and Turkic languages, Aral means island, archipelago. The Aral Sea drainage basin encompasses Uzbekistan and parts of Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Afghanistan, and Iran. 1. Formerly the fourth largest lake in the world with an area of 68,000 square kilometers, 26,300 square miles, the Aral Sea has been shrinking since the 1960s after the rivers that fed it were diverted by Soviet irrigation projects. By 1997, it had declined to 10% of its original size, splitting into four lakes: the North Aral Sea, the eastern and western basins of the once far larger South Aral Sea, and one smaller intermediate lake. 5. By 2009, the southeastern lake had disappeared and the southwestern lake had retreated to a thin strip at the western edge of the former Southern Sea. In subsequent years, occasional water flows have led to the southeastern lake sometimes being replenished to a small degree. 6. Satellite images taken by NASA in August 2014 revealed that for the first time in modern history the eastern basin of the Aral Sea had completely dried up. 7. The eastern basin is now called the Arakan Desert. In an ongoing effort in Kazakhstan to save and replenish the North Aral Sea, the Dike-Kokharel Dam project was completed in 2005. In 2008, the water level in this lake had risen by 12 meters, 39 feet, compared to 2003. 8. Salinity has dropped, and fish are again present in sufficient numbers for some fishing to be viable. 9. The maximum depth of the North Aral Sea is 42 meters, 138 feet. As of 2008 update. 2. The shrinking of the Aral Sea has been called one of the planet's worst environmental disasters. 10. The region's once prosperous fishing industry has been devastated, bringing unemployment and economic hardship. The water from the diverted Ťærə Darya River is used to irrigate about 2 million hectares, 5 million acres, of farmland in the Fergana Valley. 11. The Aral Sea region is also heavily polluted, with consequential serious public health problems. UNESCO added the historical documents concerning the development of the Aral Sea to its memory of the World Register as a unique resource to study this environmental tragedy. Geographer Nick Middleton believes that the Amu Darya did not flow into the shallow depression that now forms the Aral Sea until the beginning of the Holocene, 12, and it is known that the Amu Darya flowed into the Caspian Sea via the Uzbek Channel until the Holocene. 12. The Ťærə Darya formed a large lake in the Kızıl Kum during the Pliocene known as the Mine-Bulak Depression. 13. Despite its formerly vast size, the Aral Sea had relatively low indigenous biodiversity. Native fish species of the lake included ship sturgeon, Accipenser nudiventris, all three Pseudoscaphorhynchus sturgeon species, Aral trout, Salmotrutta aralensis, northern pike, Esox lucius, Ide, Leuciscus idus oxyanus, asp, Aspias iblioides, common rudd, Scardinius erythrophthalmus, Turkestan barbel, Luciobarbus capito cococephalus, Aral barbel, L. brachycephalus, common bream, Abramus brahma orientalis, white-eyed bream, Balarus sapa aralensis, Danube bleak, Chalcolburnus calcoides aralensis, Zege, Pelicus cultratus, Crucian carp, Carassius gibaleo, common carp, Saprinus carpio aralensis, Wells catfish, Silurus glanus, Ukrainian stickleback, Pungitius platygaster aralensis, Xander, Sander lucioperca, European perch, Perca fluviatilis, and Eurasian ruff, Gymnocephalus cernuus. All these fish aside from the stickleback lived in an anadromous or semi-anadromous lifestyle. 14-15. Following the salinity increase and drying of the lake, the Aral trout, ruff, Turkestan barbel and all sturgeon species were entirely extirpated and have not since returned due to dams blocking their migration routes, with the Aral trout and Ťærə Darya sturgeon, Pseudoscaphorhynchus fedchenkoi, possibly being driven to extinction due to their restricted range. 1516, all other native fish barring the stickleback, which persisted even during the lake's shrinkage and salinity increase, were also extirpated, but have since returned to the North Aral Sea following its recovery from the 1990s onwards. 14. Numerous other mostly salt-tolerant fish species were purposefully or inadvertently introduced during the 1960s, due to the increasing salinity of the lake from hydropower and irrigation projects that reduce the flow of fresh water. These include the Baltic herring, Clupeiharingus membris, big-scale sand smelt, Atherina boyeri caspia, black-striped pipefish, Syngnatus abaster caspius, Caucasian dwarf goby, Nipauachia caucasica, monkey goby, Neogobius fluviatilis, round goby, N. melanostomus, Searman goby, N. searman, bighead goby, Ponticula kessleri, tube-nose goby, Protororchinus marmoratus, grass carp, Caenopharyngodon idella, silver carp, Hypophthalmicthes meletrix, bighead carp, H. nobilis, black carp, Mylopharyngodon pisceus, and northern snakehead, Channa argus warpakowski. Prior to the introduction of the herring, sand smelt and gobies, there were no planktivorous fish in the lake. These introduced species led to a collapse in the lake's population of zooplankton, which also led to a collapse in the population of herring and sand smelt, from which neither species have since recovered. 14. All introduced species aside from the carp, snakehead, and, possibly, pipefish survived the lake's shrinkage and salinity increase, and during this time period the European flounder, Plateichthes fleecis, was also introduced to the lake to revive fisheries. The extirpated species, aside from possibly the pipefish, returned to the North Aral Sea following its recovery. Herring, sand smelt, gobies and flounder also managed to persist in the South Aral Sea, but its increasing salinity led all but the gobies to be eventually extirpated from the area. 14. The decrease in salinity of the North Aral Sea from the 1990s onwards has led to a recovery of its zooplankton population, with many extirpated crustacean and rotifer species returning naturally via the Syr Darya River. The extirpated zebra mussel, Dreissena polymorpha aralensis, has also been reintroduced to the northern lake. In contrast, only a few invertebrates, mainly nematodes, some rotifers, and parthenogenic brine shrimp, still exist in or have established populations in the South Aral Sea. 14. Most of the area around the Aral Sea was inhabited by desert nomads who left few written records. However, the Oxus Delta to the south has a long history under the name of Krame. It was once part of the western frontier of the Chinese Empire during the Tang dynasty. 17.